This philosophy is described by engaging students in problem-solving activities. That is a reflection of the personal and social experiences that can help them in solving their own real-life problem. A. Perennialism. B. Essentialism. C. Existentialism. D. Progressivism. This philosophy maintains that education involves confronting the problems and questions that have challenged people over the centuries. A. Naturalism. B. Pragmatism. C. Perennialism. D. Progressivism. Students must be taught self-responsibility. This is the desire of the blank teacher. A. Existentialist. B. Pragmatist. C. Perennialist. D. Progressivist. This philosophy emphasizes the authority of the teachers, and the value of a subject matter curriculum. A. Existentialism. B. Pragmatism. C. Progressivism. D. Essentialism. When teachers are convinced that it is best to teach students the skill to adapt to change, since change is the only thing permanent in this world, they subscribe to the philosophy of A. Existentialism. B. Pragmatism. C. Progressivism. D. Essentialism. On which theory is the logical sequencing of curriculum based? A. Perennialism. B. Pragmatism. C. Progressivism. D. Naturalism. To teacher Darlene, the learner is a rational being. School should develop their rational and moral powers. If you identify with teacher Darlene, you adhere to this philosophy. A. Behaviorism. B. Perennialism. C. Existentialism. D. Progressivism. How do cognitive psychologists see the learner? A. With empty minds. B. Uninterested to learn. C. Full of experiences. D. Totally conditioned by environment. Teacher Arjun, a math teacher, found out that her students love billiards. As a progressivist, how can you utilize what you found out? A. Continue teaching math the way you were taught to teach it. B. Tell them not to waste time playing billiards. C. Use billiards in teaching them math. D. Teach them using textbooks. Teacher Jocelyn observes cleanliness and order in her classroom to create a conducive atmosphere for learning. On which theory is her practice based? A. Gestalt psychology. B. Psychoanalysis. C. Behaviorism. D. Naturalism. To teacher Marjorie. The learner is a social being who learns well through an active interplay with others. If you agree with teacher Marjorie, you are more of A. Progressivist. B. Perennialist. C. Essentialist. D. Rationalist. The principal shares the thought with his teachers that the subject matter should help students understand and appreciate themselves as unique individuals, who accept complete responsibility of their thoughts, feelings, and actions. From which point of view is this thought based? A. Essentialism. B. Rationalism. C. Progressivism. D. Existentialism. After finishing the degree in education, teacher Princess realizes that learning never stops. In fact, she accumulates more knowledge after leaving the portal of her alma mater. This typifies what kind of the philosophy? A. Constructivism. B. Perennialism. C. Progressivism. D. Humanism. Charity listens to the advice given by her sister to end the relationship that she has with Lee Min-ho. However, her sister learned that the advice she has given was not followed, and Charity decided to continue the relationship. This action of Charity is a manifestation what kind of philosophy? A. Essentialism. B. Existentialism. C. Perennialism. D. Humanism. Who among the following believes that the learning requires disciplined attention, regular homework, and respect for legitimate authority? A. Reconstructionist. B. Essentialist. C. Perennialist. D. Progressivist. This is the philosophy of subjectivity of selfhood, whose fundamental doctrine proclaims man's freedom, in the accomplishment of his destiny. A. Perennialism. B. Essentialism. C. Existentialism. D. Progressivism. To teacher Shayla. The learner can choose what he becomes despite his environment. Teacher Shayla's response comes from the mouth of A. Essentialist. B. Perennialist. C. Existentialist. D. Behaviorist. To teacher Marie Tichy, the learners are a product of their environment. Sometimes they have no choice. They're determined by their environment. Whose philosophical concept is that? A. Existentialist. B. Progressivist. C. Behaviorist. D. Rationalist. In the social science class of Miss Shane, students identify the various social and economic problems that require urgent solutions. They not only discuss the ways to address it, but also agreed to participate in solving them. What kind of philosophy does this class uphold? A. Essentialism. B. Reconstructivism. C. Naturalism. D. Behaviorism. In his class, teacher Arnold always present principles and values, so as to encourage his students to examine them and decide for themselves whether to accept it or not. What kind of philosophy does teacher Arnold practice? A. Idealism. B. Existentialism. C. Humanism. D. Essentialism. Teacher J. Marvin is an inspiration to almost all of his students. His efficiency and effectiveness in the profession is truly outstanding. Which of the following describes this attitude of the student toward him? A. Existentialism. B. Naturalism. C. Progressivism. D. Idealism. A teacher puts emphasis on making her students master the rules of multiplying fractions, and not so much on the strategies and execution. This is an illustration of A. Existentialism. B. Progressivism. C. Essentialism. D. Naturalism. The establishment of the School of the Future (SOF) introduces improvement and reform in education, to respond to both human and social needs. What philosophy is related to it? A. Perennialism. B. Idealism. C. Existentialism. D. Reconstructivism. This philosophy is a way of viewing and thinking about life in the world, so that priority is given into individualism and subjectivity. It believes that human beings are the creator of their own experiences. A. Idealism. B. Reconstructionism. C. Realism. D. Existentialism. This philosophy believes that the schools should originate policies and progress, which would bring about reform of the social orders. A. Behaviorism. B. Progressivism. C. Reconstructionism. D. Perennialism. The philosophy contends that truth is universal and unchanging, and therefore, a good education is also universal and constant. A. Existentialism. B. Essentialism. C. Perennialism. D. Progressivism. This philosophy emphasizes the teaching of controversial issues, to prepare students for a progressive structuring of the social order. A. Progressivism. B. Social experimentation. C. Behaviorism. D. Reconstructionism. Students are the product of their environment. To which philosophy does this statement belong? A. Naturalism. B. Essentialism. C. Behaviorism. D. Existentialism. The Department of Education gives greater emphasis on the development of basic skills. What is the philosophical basis for this? A. Pragmatism. B. Existentialism. C. Naturalism. D. Essentialism. Teacher Carla May views her student as unique, free-choosing and responsible individuals. All classroom activities revolve the said premise. What theory underlines this? A. Naturalism. B. Essentialism. C. Behaviorism. D. Existentialism. Thank you for watching. See you on my next video. Subscribe to my channel. Maybelline Medrano. God bless future LPTs.